Want to join? Okay, good work, Yehuda. L'chaim, l'chaim, and bracha. L'chaim. Where's your l'chaim? I only have to say l'chaim myself. Now we're talking. I don't know how much time it will take to say this story. It's the first time I'm sharing this story. It's a Meredith story. So I don't know if we have time to do more than one story or not. Let's at least do one story. This story was written down by Shazar. Shazar was a former president of Israel, and he came from a Lubavitch family. And he himself shared the story. And it's about, tonight's the Hilula, the anniversary of the passing of Maharash. There's a story about the Maharash. The story begins with his great-great-grandfather, whose name was Reb Shol. Reb Shol was engaged to someone from Mir in Lithuania, and he didn't really want to move to Lithuania because he was a chassid of the Alter Rebbe, and therefore he wanted to stay around the Alter Rebbe. But he came to Alter Rebbe and he told Alter Rebbe that this is a story. He's engaged this person from Lithuania, and he was a little concerned. The Alter Rebbe told him not to be concerned, and that not only will this not take away from his connection to chassidus, and on the contrary, the Alter Rebbe said you'll create in the Mir a chassidish shtil, a little chassidic shul. That's what Shol did. Shol moved to the Mir, and he created a little shtibel there. That was already in the time of the Alter Rebbe. His son, Rabbi Moshe, was a very prominent chassid of Tzemach Tzedek, who grew up in Mir, and he was very knowledgeable in Torah, knowledgeable in the Gunim, and he's very prestigious person. Also, he was very wealthy, and he was also knowledgeable in songs, Chassidic melodies, and he had also a very fiery personality. He would dance a lot, and he's looked up.
We don't have.
He was looked up by all the Chassidim would look up, and when he would dance, the people would have to try to catch up with him because he would just because he would just be, he would outpace everybody. So he would visit. He had a custom of visiting Tzemach Tzedek twice a year. He would visit the Tzemach Tzedek on Rosh Hashanah, and he would visit Tzemach Tzedek also on Shavuos, Rosh Hashanah and Shavuos. And whenever he would visit the Rebbe, he would bring 3 gifts. One gift was a gift for Kol Chabad. Every chassid, the Alter Rebbe instructed, should put aside money to support the charity that the Alter Rebbe established to support families in Israel. This charity began already at the time of the Alter Rebbe to support the Alter Rebbe's teacher, Menel of Vitebsk, and his students who had traveled to Israel. And today, Kol Chabad supports all Jews who are in need in Israel and other places. So the Alter Rebbe instructed everyone should have a pushka, a tzedakah box for this fund. And Rabbi Moshe, he was the one who was entrusted to collect the funds in his town. Rose, want to come on my lap? Not this time? All right. And he would bring all of the collected funds to the Tzemach Tzedek. That was one gift he would bring with him. There was so established that no matter how rich or poor you were, you definitely, if you were a chassid, you put aside money to be given to this fund, and that was his job. He would, people would come and they would give their money and they would say l'chaim with him. He would say l'chaim with everyone. They would bring their gift and they would wish each other they should be able to give more and to do better in business, to be able to give more tzedakah and to help Kol Chabad. So Rabbi Moshe, when he would visit the Tzemach Tzedek, he would bring the monies for Kol Chabad. He also would bring a second gift, a donation for the support of the household of the Rebbe, called Maimit. For this already, not everyone participated in. This was not a mandatory tax, if you will. Not everybody participated in it, but most people tried to give at least something to support the Rebbe's household, Maimid. And there was a third gift he would give the Rebbe, and that was a personal gift. He would give the Rebbe a silver snuff box, a scarf, something he would bring for the Rebbe to use, a handkerchief, something that the Rebbe himself would use. And when he would return from visiting Tzemach Tzedek, he would return with three new things. He would return with the new teachings from the Tzemach Tzedek. He would return with a song that he had learned in Lubavitch, a new song that we're singing on that Yontif. And he would return also with cake that the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, Tzemach Tzedek's Rebbetzin, would bake for him personally. He was very respected in the city of Lubavitch. Everyone who would visit Lubavitch would have to try to find a place to stay, but he was honored to stay in the Rebbe's chutzner, in the courtyard of the Rebbe. Again, he was knowledgeable and prominent, and people weren't jealous of him because of his wealth or his prestige, but they were jealous of his ability to go visit the Rebbe. Not everyone will wish they could go, travel to the Rebbe, and that was something that he uniquely was able to do, and other chassidim just wish they could. But before he would go, the chassidim would make a farbrengen, and they would say l'chaim, and he would repeat the teachings that he had heard from the Tzemach Tzedek on his last trip. Before he would go on the next trip, he would repeat again the teaching, explain the discourse. And there was a very warm Hasidic atmosphere, and they would farbrengen and gather together until the wagon driver would come and bring him to the wagon driver's name was a Meir Bunin. A Meir Bunin would come and he would take him to the station to go to the train in Mir to go travel from there to Lubavitch. Rabbi Moshe married his niece. His brother Rodel had a daughter named Zelda, and he married his niece. His wife was also unusually a great tzaddikus. She knew the entire Tehillim by heart, and she was able to recite the whole Tehillim without mistakes every Shabbos by heart. She was also in her house. People would come and they would farbrengen, and they had a Hasidic gathering. Sometimes they would break things. She was a very pleasant disposition. She would treat everyone there like family, and she would never criticize anyone, even though they would, dirty her furniture and ruin the house. Not only that, but before her husband would go on a trip, she would always work very hard to make sure he had all that he needed, and that when he was away and visiting Lubavitch, she would be the one that all the chassidim would turn to for help. Just like her husband, Ramesha, was someone that everyone would turn to for a loan or for assistance. So she was the one, Rebbetzin, his wife, Zelda, she was the one who all the chassidim would go to for a loan and other assistance. And she was uniquely, and even in that time, a very modest, holy, special woman. And there's one thing that bothered Ramesha and his wife, Zelda, and that was that they didn't have any children. It wasn't that his wife was barren, she was able to have children, but unfortunately, her children never survived. They lived for a few years, and then they died. And you can imagine the grief that they had raising children and the children dying. So she, 1 year before Shoshana, she told her husband that she is now pregnant, and she wants, when her husband goes to the new Rebbe, who's now the Rebbe Maharash, new Rebbe in Lubavitch. It was his first year. I'm not sure, one of the first years of the Rebbe Maharash's leadership. And he was going there for Shoshana. He should go ask the Rebbe Maharash for a bracha that this child should live. This child shouldn't just live and be born, but continue to live and not pass away. So she hopefully sent this message with her husband, hoping that he would give this message and that the blessing would be fulfilled. So he traveled to Lubavitch, and he spent Rosh Hashanah there, and he felt that something special was going to happen. Even, it wasn't just he felt that way, he could see that something special was going to happen. He went to the shul in the city of in Lubavitch, davening with Rabbi Maharash, and on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the Haftarah is about the prayer of Chana, when Chana prayed for a child. And while the Rebbe Maharash was saying the Haftarah, the prayer of Chana, asking for a child, because the reason we say the Haftarah then is because Chana was remembered on Rosh Hashanah, and it's generally that Haftarah is known as a time for asking for children. So the Rebbe Maharash stopped the Haftarah and looked at Rabbi Moshe from Mir. So he really felt like this is for me. And after Rosh Hashanah is over and Sim Gedalia is over, it's now time for him to enter the Rebbe's room. And he had to give the request of his wife, and he was very nervous about it. So he drank a lot of vodka to try to calm his nerves down, to prepare for going into the Maharash and to present the request of his wife. But he was so emotional. He was no longer presenting the request of his wife. It was a joint request. He and his wife were asking that they should be able to have a child, and the child should live, not like their other children who lived and passed away very young. So he came to Maharash, and he found that Maharash, he came to Maharash's room. Maharash was humming, he's holding a sefer, holding a book, and he was humming the Haftorah of the first day of Rosh Hashanah. And he asked the Maharash for this blessing. The Maharash says you should travel peacefully, b'shalom. You davened with concentration, said the Maharash, and your prayer will be accepted in Mirz Hashem. And then the Maharash said to him, and you should give the child a name after Nochin Taten. Give the child a name after father. Okay, give the child a name after the father. Okay. Wow, amazing. Now the custom in those days was that after you left the Rebbe's room, you would go into a dance, a chassidus dance. So now it's great, it's time to dance. And he was ready to dance. The Rebbe Maharash said clearly give a name after the father. He knows that this is going to have a baby, and and this baby is going to live. So he was dancing, and then it came time for him to leave. And he traveled back. When he traveled back, the chassidim were waiting for him. They had a farbrengen again, and he shared the new teachings of the Maharash, and the new nigun, and the cake that the Rebbe made for him. But on the way there, and the way till he got to there, he had a quandary, and he couldn't solve the quandary. The Rebbe, to his misfortune, when he traveled back on his car and in the train, there was only non-Jews there. No one to talk with about the experience. He had a book. He tried to read the book. He couldn't read the book. Just his mind was elsewhere because he couldn't answer this question here. What was his question? His question was, the Rebbe Maharash said to give a name after father. In Yiddish, you say der Tate. The Tate means the father. Or actually, the Maharash said Tate, Nachem Taten, after father. Which father? Should he name his child after his own father, Reb Shol, or should he name his child after the Maharash's father, the Tzemach Tzedek? So he didn't know what to do. And he was debating, maybe he should name the child a little after both. Maybe he should call his son Shol Menachem Mendel. Maybe he should call Menachem Mendel Shol. But that certainly wasn't what the Rebbe Maharash was saying. The Rebbe Maharash said after father. So he meant one of the two. He didn't know which one. So he was so confused. And he came back, and they had that gathering. And he was someone who was a very positive person, very upbeat person. He tried to restore his trust in Hashem and calm down. He didn't really know what he's going to do, but Purim arrives, and right after the Purim meal, his wife goes to deliver the baby. Did I say the baby? The babies. He had twins. So the Rebbe Maharash's words were fulfilled. A name after father. Which father? Both fathers. If one child was named Shol after his own father, and his firstborn son was named Menachem Mendel after the Tzemach Tzedek. But it didn't really matter what he named his children, because his children got nicknames. His oldest son they nicknamed him Rebbe, and his younger son Shol, they nicknamed him Zayde, because he was named after his grandfather. And as that was the that was once I wanted to share how, and the Rebbe Maharash gave this person this bracha, and it was fulfilled. I heard today another story. I hope Beryl can correct me in the story. We heard the story together. A similar story. There was a guy who had a similar problem. They would have children. The children would die very young. And they came to the Rebbe Maharash also to ask for a bracha. The Rebbe Maharash said they should name their child Bentzion. And this child grew, and he moved to Israel, and he helped a lot of Jews in Israel. And the family feels that the reason why the Rebbe Maharash said they should name their child Bentzion is because he should go to Tzion, he should go to Yerushalayim, and he should help families in Yerushalayim, which is indeed what he did. The 13th of Tishrei, the yard site, the Ilula of the Rebbe Maharash, is connected to the theme of L'chatchila Rebbe. L'chatchila Rebbe means, as Rebbe Maharash said, the world says that if you can't go under an obstacle, go over. The Rebbe Maharash says, and I say, David, if you wanted to say something, I'm sorry, unmute yourself. It just sounded like it was background noise. The Rebbe Maharash said, and I say, said the Rebbe Maharash, go straight over. If you have an obstacle, don't try to go under the obstacle. The Rebbe Maharash says, I say, go straight over. On that note, the Rebbe related in 1956, shortly after the passing of the previous Rebbe, there was a chassid who was running a school in Israel. In Israel, it's not like it is in the United States, a little more communistic, if you will. And the schools receive funding from the government, and the government's very precise about what kind of schools they will fund, and the schools they wouldn't fund, especially then, 1956. And the Rebbe instructed, knowing how the previous Rebbe emphasized how every moment should be used to study Torah, the Rebbe instructed this principle to open the school 2 weeks before the scheduled time. 2 weeks before the scheduled time, they should open the school already. So he does. And this principle wasn't so knowledgeable in halacha or not. He was a simple, devoted chassid. And the school says to him, if you don't close that school right now, you're going to lose your funding. He says, listen, I got instruction from, the Rebbe repeated the story. The Rebbe said he got instruction from someone who gave a certain title to. That's what the Rebbe said. He got instruction from someone that he gave a certain title to. In other words, he got instruction from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's what he called our Rebbe. He called our Rebbe the Lubavitcher Rebbe. So he got instruction, the Rebbe said, from someone he gave a certain title to, because that person was giving him the message of what the previous Rebbe would want. And so he told the representative of the government who was threatening to cut the funding, was so angry at him and telling him you're going to lose everything. He's telling him, listen, this instruction I got, if you like it, great. If you don't like it, we'll figure this out without you. That's what he told him. So instead of this government representative being angry, he was angry a moment before, a miracle happened. This school needed funding to put up a gate and other structures in the school, and they couldn't get the assistance from the government to do this for years. For years they were asking. As soon as the same day that he gave them the reply to the government representative that this is what they're doing and that's it, all of a sudden the government they said sure, they okayed and green lighted the funding for the gate and other structures that the school needs. So it really, Rebbe was highlighting with this story how people who follow in the ways of the previous Rebbe will see miracles and wonders. Rebbe said that in the time of the previous Rebbe, when he was living in this world, he was somewhat limited by his body. Therefore, although there's miracles and success, but there was limitation. But after the passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe said there is no limitation whatsoever, and the miracles and wonders are just flowing. That's the second story. And since Yosef Cohen just joined, I'll tell you a third story. This is a good story. It's also on the line of, actually, this is our, you're keeping track, there's a fourth story, right? There's a fourth story. This is also in line with the idea of a chatchila Rebbe, of going straight over, not being affected by obstacles. There was a chassid of our Rebbe, his name was Rabbi Nemes. Rabbi Nemes was a stamp collector, professional stamp collector. And he was trying to do business for a while with someone that he met. He met someone named Tenkel, Mr. Tenkel. And he wanted to do business with this guy Tenkel for a while. But Mr. Tenkel was hard to reach. He was a very prominent businessman. He was a very high-level businessman. And they ended up meeting, and he ended up trying to make some kind of deal with him. But it was a complicated deal. It required lawyers and contracts. And he invested a lot of time. It was in his profession in stamps. After 6 months, they managed to do everything that was needed to ratify the deal. But right before the deal was meant to be ratified, Mr. Tenkel had cold feet. He canceled the deal. So Mr. Nemes was so distraught. He put in 6 months of his life for this deal, which could have really helped him. Now it's all nothing. He felt terrible. At that time, Mr. Tenkel traveled to Europe with his wife. And unfortunately, his wife died in an accident. Mr. Tenkel himself also was injured. And when he came back, Yitzchak Nemes asked to speak to him. And again, they spoke. And he said to him, listen, there's something you could do. We didn't meet by accident. It wasn't just about the business. We can't do business together. I want to do some spiritual business with you. In honor of your wife's neshama, you don't know what you could do for her neshama by deciding to keep kosher. Keep kosher. I don't want to keep kosher because, especially now, till now, my wife made food for me. And so we could talk about what she'll make for me. But now I have to make my own food. How am I supposed to keep kosher? So Rabbi Nemes said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. At that time in New York, there was a place called Schreiber's in the Bronx. And they made the first kosher TV dinners. He said, I will get you kosher dinner every night. And that's what he did. He would go on Thursday night and he would take a subway to the Bronx. He would go to Schreiber's and he would buy 7 dinners. He would buy 7 because that's as much as he could carry. And he would bring the 7 dinners to Mr. Tenkel's home in Riverside. And that's what he would do every single week. Every week he would go there, bring him the TV dinners for a year and a half. For a year and a half, he's going to his house, bringing him these TV dinners. After a year and a half, Mr. Tenkel says, you know what, let's stop this. You don't have to do this anymore. He says, why not? He says, I'm not even eating them. They're too salty. You're not eating them? What are you doing with them? He says, I give them to my dog. It's like he got sick just hearing this. Like he put in a year and a half of his life to help this guy keep kosher. And every week he's going for hours buying these TV dinners and traveling to the Bronx and to the Riverside and putting out so much money. It just knocked the wind out of him. And it made him, I'm sure what he thought was, like waste. What a waste of all of his time and energy. But what do we learn in today's Hayom Yom? Today's Hayom Yom, it says, Chazak al Tamula, there is a brisk kusul Tamula. There is a covenant made about efforts that we make for Jewish education. That when you reach out to someone to help them spiritually, and you do this with wisdom and with friendship, there's a rule, there's a covenant that it will never go empty-handed. Never go empty-handed. That's the rule. Bris krusel tamula bechachma mitzadas mitzadas ukirvadas. That when you do make an effort to help someone in education, it will not go empty-handed. Okay. So, but this felt like you totally empty, right? 2 years later, they had in New York at that time something called Pagisha. Pagisha was it still is an event that happens a few times a year where people come to Crown Heights for a Shabbos to have an encounter with this Hasidic neighborhood and the Rebbe. And Rabbi Castell, who runs the Chabad Youth Organization in New York, called up the Nemes family, Mrs. Nemes, can you host a gentleman, he's a student in the university, he wants to come for Shabbos, last minute arrival, can you host him? Yeah, we'll host him. They host this man comes to their house, and they're talking, and why were you interested in coming to this neighborhood? Why did you want to do this? The guy says, I'll tell you why. My grandfather told me that there's a very nice community here. They're very special people. He said there was a guy who would come to my house every week and bring me 7 TV dinners just so I should keep kosher. So you should pay attention. These people should check them out. They must be special people. That grandson of Mr. Tenkel, as they realized this was Mr. Tenkel's grandson, he loved that Shabbos, and he became himself a full-fledged Lubavitcher chassid. So, bottom line is, chatchila riber, not to look at the obstacles, pay attention to what the task is, not to pay attention to any of the naysayers of your own mind, naysayers of the outside. Just don't go straight over all the obstacles, and it never goes empty-handed. Chazakot Hamula is a rule, Brisat Hamula, that we go forward and you try to help other Jews come close to Judaism. Somehow there's fruit that is born from those efforts. Hashem shall help us all, that we should all go Chatchila Riber, doing what the Rebbe wants from us, the tremendous success. And the ikar is, the main thing is that the Eibishter should go Chatchila Riber and take us immediately out of this Golus and should go tonight to Yerushalayim Yakesh Mashiach Tzekenu. That's what I wanted to share. Any questions or comments?
Good story. Thank you.
Thank you. Good vach, Yosef. Good vach, Beryl. Good vach, David. Good vach, Chaim Shalom. Good vach, Yehuda.
Good.
Good.
Good.